This is section 6.4, and we're going to talk about the graphs of sine and cosine and things that affect the basic one. So in this first statement here, we've got y equals a sine, we're going to call it w, x plus b. Y equals a sine wx minus phi or phi plus b. So you can do all of these things. You have an amplitude that affects it. You have something with the period. You have this horizontal shift, and you have a vertical shift. So all of that can affect it. Let's talk about the main things in this one. The period is equal to 2 pi normally. Any sine or cosine is 2 pi, meaning it would repeat at 2 pi. But when you have a number in front of the argument here of x, then you have to have 2 pi over that number. That'll give us the period. Amplitude is the absolute value of a, which is the number in front of the sine function. It's always going to be positive because it's absolute value. The phase shift occurs when you have this number divided by this number, and that's going to go either left or right. So those are the things, and then this b is a vertical shift. So we'll see those when we start looking at the graphs. All right, so here's some general information. We've already said that sine has a period of 2 pi. So its domain is all reals. Remember, it's going to go on and on and on with that sine curve. The range, it lives normally from -1 to 1. When you start having vertical shifts, that's going to change that. But the basic one is -1 to 1. X-intercepts at all the multiples of pi, -2 pi, -pi, 0, pi, 2 pi. And the y-intercept is 0, meaning it goes through 0 on the basic one. Properties of cosine. Domain is still all reals. Range is still -1 to 1. Its x-intercepts are multiples of pi over 2. So you can see that there. Y-intercept is 1. It's going to go through 1 on the basic one. Excuse me. So there's just a picture of sine x, and we said it goes from -1 to 1, so that's the range. There's your x-intercepts at -pi, 0, pi, 2 pi, y-intercept of 0. So that's what that's going to look like. Properties of cosine, same idea. We've just talked about that up there, and we don't need that. All right. So amplitude, we've got that. We've got period. We've already talked about that. These are the steps for graphing a sinusoidal, we'll just say either sine or cosine function by hand using key points. And you would determine the amplitude and period, and you would divide the period into 4 intervals, and then you use those endpoints. So what you're trying to get is the max and the min. Let's look down here. If you have this in class face-to-face, then we may do some by hand. If we're only doing it online, and for your graphing homework, you would be doing it online. But if you were doing it by hand, you would do this up here, and you would end up getting the period, and you would just graph this amount. And we would end up with the max there, the x-intercepts, a min there, and a max there. So you get those 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would give you a really good sketch of the sine graph. It would work the same way with cosine. All right, let's go look at our problem set and what you're going to have to do on the math lab homework. All right, here's number 1. Enter the correct choice. The function y equals -3 cosine 6x has an amplitude. Remember, amplitude is this number right here, and it's the absolute value of that number, so that will be a +3. and a period of, remember, period is 2 pi over the number in front of the x. So 2 pi over 6 reduces to pi over 3. So that's your period. Number 2, y equals 3 sine x. Same rules hold true here. Amplitude is the absolute value. So we've got 3. The period, the number in front of x here is 1. And if there's not any other number, then it's still going to be just 2 pi. It's 2 pi over 1. All right, let's do it with 3. Negative 5 sine 8x. The amplitude is 5. Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. The period is 2 pi over 8. Simplifies to pi over 4. Number 4, same thing. 8/9 is the amplitude. 2 pi over 3 halves. 2 pi over 3 halves. That means we're going to flip this. We're going to have 2 pi over 1 times 2 over 3. That's 4 pi over 3 for the period. Now, number 5, you're going to be doing some graphing on the computer. And so I've tried to put in some screenshots to show you how you're going to do that. 4 cosine x. So what we should notice, our amplitude is 4. Our period is 2 pi over 1, so 2 pi. We'll answer these after we do this graph. So when you're in there, you will enlarge the graph and you'll get this blank graph and these icons will come up. If it's cosine, you're going to choose the tool that looks like the U. If it's sine, you're going to do the sideways S that looks like a sine curve. So you pick the correct one and then you click on the origin right here. It'll give you a basic cosine curve. Then we go down to these boxes and our amplitude in this one was 4. So you would put 4 here and you have to put 2 pi over or pi over whatever it is you can put there, and you can type pi to get the pi. If you had a vertical shift, you could do it there. If you had a phase shift, you would have to do that. We don't have that here. So that's how you're going to do those. Now, looking at that, it says, what's the domain? We remember that the domain of cosine and sine is all reals. Keeps going on and on. So negative infinity to infinity in interval notation. The range, normal range, is -1 to 1, but we have an amplitude of 4, meaning it goes up to 4 and down to -4. And we'll use brackets on this because it actually can exist at -4 and at 4. So that's how we'll write the range. All right, let's go look at 6. Y equals sine 7x. The amplitude is still 1. So you'll go up to 1 and down to -1. That'll be our range. The period is 2 pi over 7. That means it's going to repeat every 2/7 of pi. So it's going to squinch in. It's like an accordion, and it really squinches in. And so this is what the answer graph would look like. When you go in and do it, you would put in a period of 2 pi over 7 and an amplitude of 1. All right, let's try this one. 4 cosine x plus 1. So we have an amplitude of 4. So instead of 1 and -1, we're up 4. So that's going to put us at 5. And we're down 4. So instead of there, we would be down here. But we're going to have this vertical shift, so we can't totally figure that yet. When you graph it, you have an amplitude of 4, a period of 2 pi, and a vertical shift of a +1. So when we finish, our domain is still going to be -pi to pi. Our range is going to be from -3 up to 5. Right there. Let's look down here at the answer. So 5 is where we went up because we went up 4 from 1. We were down at -4, and if you go up 1, you're at -3. So this is where it lives, from -3 up to 5 in brackets. Number 8, -4 cosine pi over 3x minus 2. We have an amplitude issue, we have a period to figure out, and we have a -2, which is a vertical shift. All right, so our amplitude would be a +4. Our period would be 2 pi over this. So when you do 2 pi over 3, you flip the pi over 3. So now you've got 2 pi over 1 times 3 over pi. The pi's cancel out, and you end up with a period of 6. And that's how it will, that's when it will repeat. And then we have a vertical shift going down 2. So let's look at the answer graph. So we shifted down 2. We should have been at 4. 4 would have been the amplitude given. But since we shifted down 2, we're at 2. And instead of -4, we're down at -6. So our range is -6 up to 2. Okay. The last two are going at this a little bit differently. They're going to give you the amplitude and period and ask you to come up with the equation. So the period is 4 pi. That's what you're given. So we go over here and we say 2 pi over b. We don't know this number. It equals 4 pi. So we got to solve for that b. We cross multiply. So we have b times 4 pi equals 2 pi. Divide by the 4 pi and you get b is 1/2. So that's going to be in your equation that you're going to write. We know it is a sine function, and because it's an amplitude of 5, we could either have a -5 or a +5. So we have to have this c. There are two equations because we have two possibilities. Both of those have a period that works out, but we need a -5 and a +5. We do the same thing with number 10. You're given a period of 5. So 2 pi over b equals 5 over 1. 5b equals 2 pi. Divide by the 5, so b is 2 pi over 5. That's going to go right in front of the x. The amplitude was 8, so that means we could have either a -8 or a +8. So I think that should help you with your graphing on the computer and help you figuring out the amplitude and the period.